نصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Surah Al-An'am talks about the oneness and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it also talks about some of the ways of Allah, what can be called as-sunan al-ilahiyya, the ways in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things, the principles, the laws Allah Azza wa Jal has laid down for various occurrences, the causes and the effects and how those occur are mentioned in this surah to some extent. And He also talks about the way He brings about consequences. So in one verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, look, He is capable of bringing about His punishment in a variety of ways. Because what happens is, sometimes a person thinks that they are secure, a group, community feels that they are secure from the displeasure of Allah just because they don't see it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be aware of the fact that what is called punishment or retribution, it can take many forms and many shapes. قُلْ هُوَ الْقَادِرُ عَلَىٰ أَن يَبْعَثَ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابًا مِّن فَوْقِكُمْ. That punishment could come from above. And when we say above, it has many shapes, many forms. If we look at the history of the previous ummahs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described in the Quran, so many different things came from the sky. For some people, it was a wind that turned into destruction. For others, it was a rain of stones. For others, it was a rain of fire coming down, like in the case of the people of Madian. Many things can happen from the sky. Sudden changes in the weather, sudden changes in the seasons, sudden storms, and bursts of angry weather for which there is no apparent seasonal pattern, and there is no logical or reasonable evidence or proof for it. It can all happen from the sky. And sometimes it could be in the form of rains being stopped. So what is needed by the dwellers of the earth is cut off. And there is nothing anyone can do about these things. So this is one way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring about consequences. أَوْ مِن تَحْتِ أَرْجُلِكُمْ. It can come from beneath your feet. So what happens from beneath our feet? Well, for some people, it was an earthquake. And for others, people like Qarun, earth opened up and swallowed them. And for other nations, it was severe drought and famine, where the earth dries up and the earth stops yielding crops. There's not much anyone can do about these things. Human beings suffer, and with them all of the things that the human beings depend on, the life forms such as the plants and the animals that the human beings rely on for their existence, they also are depleted, and there is nothing anyone can do about it. So it's not just about a storm coming or a bolt of lightning coming and striking someone on the head. Many, many forms. And being as far into the world's history as we are today, in the timeline of the world's history, we have so many things to draw comparatives and comparisons from. So many reference points. In fact, entire books, volumes have been written on the demise of nations and how it has happened. Nations that were prominent, that were prosperous, they had everything. They had comfort, they had safety and security, they were financially very secure and stable. All their systems were in place, extremely organized. And the people were enjoying life there. And then all of a sudden, something in this changed. And when it changed, sometimes because of one factor that was manipulated, of course by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the entire life of that community turned upside down. So all of this is in the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we want, we can, and these books have not been written by Muslims. I'm talking about books being written by non-Muslim researchers who have been concerned and curious as to why and how does a nation that appears to be doing perfectly fine all of a sudden get washed away and no one is ready to talk about them. Why does that happen? And why does it happen over and over again? So you'll see the ways and the workings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behind all of these things. In the case of the people of Makkah, and we will read up ahead inshallah in a few ajza, that قرية كانت آمنة مطمئنة يأتيها رزقها رغدا من كل مكان فكفرت بأنعم الله. This was a place that was completely safe and secure. It was safe because no one would ever dare harm the people of Makkah because they were the neighbors of the Haram, of the Kaaba. Because of the Kaaba, this place was untouchable. Nobody would dare raid it or even attack the caravans that were coming and going in the summer months, going up to Syro-Palestine, and in the winter months going down towards Yemen. Nobody would touch the caravans of the Meccans. Allah says, يَأْتِيهَا رِزْقُهَا رَغَدًا مِنْ كُلِّ مَكَانٍ. And because it's a place that doesn't grow anything, their rizq was coming from all over the place. And it was coming with plenitude. It was coming openly. But they did something. فَكَفَرَتْ بِأَنْعُمِ اللَّهِ. They showed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ingratitude to His ni'mas. The ni'mah of being the neighbors of the Kaaba. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. What they should have done is worshipped only the Lord of this Kaaba. And then when the Lord of this Kaaba sent His messenger to invite towards Him, everyone knows what they did with him. Allah says, they had no value for my bounties, for my grace. So then what happened? فَأَذَاقَهُ اللَّهُ لِبَاسَ الْجُوعِ. All of that prosperity turned into famine and starvation, and that comfort turned into fear. They were constantly afraid. Now they lost that sanctity and they lost that respect that they used to have. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took it away from them. So sometimes the punishment of Allah comes from the skies, sometimes it comes from beneath the feet, and sometimes it comes from both. And there is another punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which does not involve using the sky or the earth. It involves using people against each other. أَوْ يَلْبِسَكُمْ شِيَعًا وَيُذِيقَ بَعْضَكُمْ بَأْسَ بَعْضٍ. Or Allah says, I can turn you into groups, into opposing groups. And I will make you punish each other. Where each group is plotting and planning to hurt the other, and the other is doing the same. And like this they keep tasting. وَيُذِيقَ بَعْضَكُمْ بَأْسَ بَعْضٍ. Allah will make each of you taste the punishment of the other. Allahu Akbar. And there is no system, there is no political system or otherwise any kind of system that the human being can come up with that can stop him against this. So that is also one of the ways through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings His wrath upon people. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks that, really do you feel so safe and so secure that you think you can just keep on going and keep on getting away with whatever it is that you're doing and nothing, there's going to be no retribution? Absolutely there's a retribution. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just gives a certain amount of time. That's all it is. So these are some of the guidelines that the Quran is conveying in this surah. Another instruction that is given to us is that when you see people, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ الَّذِينَ يَخُوضُونَ فِي آيَاتِنَا فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِهِ. When you see people speaking, commenting without knowledge about our verses, about the verses that Allah has revealed, in other words, about the deen of Allah. When you see people, khada yakhudu, it means to plunge in, to dive in. So this is someone who's diving in without looking, someone who's diving into a subject without having any knowledge. So when you see people speaking about our deen without knowledge, then turn away from them. Don't ever join that conversation. فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِهِ. Let them plunge into another subject other than deen. Then you can sit with them, but don't sit with them while they're having these discussions. So one of the things that we're challenged with today is that there are so many discussions on so many different platforms, especially the social media platforms. There are so many discussions, everyone wants to put in their 2 cents worth. And the comments that are coming are largely emotional. It's the reaction of someone to something, and that reaction doesn't really mean anything. We live in a world, and we should understand this. We live in a world in which everyone is fighting for social capital, which means sometimes in the form of social media, how many likes can I get? How many clicks can I get? How many subscribers can I get? That's what matters. Now, as long as they can get someone to push like, they'll put anything out there. They'll put the most controversial thing. Because people get bored of hearing the same thing. Yes, we know this. Okay, move on. So people will deliberately raise controversies, raise controversial matters and subjects, or speak in a controversial way about something just to invoke a reaction in people. How do we deal with this as Muslims? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the guidance. When you see people, I get a lot of people forwarding me clips and recordings and posts. So-and-so posted this. Please explain. So-and-so is saying this about such and such aspect of deen. Please clarify. So my first question is, why were you listening? You have that much time to just go and browse through anything, and just because someone said something to you, just because someone said something, it doesn't mean that we have to comment on every single thing. Imagine, this would take like a whole department the size of this school that is there just to comment on everything that is posted. And we need 100 employees, full-time, whose job is to comment on every single thing that's posted in the world. We don't need to. I've told you, be selective in where you take your knowledge of deen from. Just because there's some guy saying something on YouTube or saying something on Facebook or whatever it is, that whatever platform it is, you don't have to pay attention to it. The biggest loss is you're distracted from what you are doing. You're distracted from the a'mal that you were already engaged in. Someone all of a sudden comes and says, you know what, such and such sunnah is not important. Tomorrow someone's going to come and say, you know what, you don't really have to fast in Ramadan, you can fast whenever you want. You say, oh my goodness, Mufti Sahib, please tell us what's wrong with you? Why are you bringing this? Why are you listening to this? You also have a responsibility. Use this, what lies between your ears. And you want someone to comment on every single thing for you? Leave those people. They are feeding off of your attention that you're giving them. That's what gives them importance in the world. That people are you, all of us, people like yourselves, all of a sudden, your curiosity to speak, please explain. They want that. They want to push people into a position where now their words are being explained and justified, and conversations are being started in every circle. This is the purpose. وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ الَّذِينَ يَخُوضُونَ فِي آيَاتِنَا. Whenever you see someone speaking about the deen of Allah, and they don't have the haqq to speak about the deen of Allah, they don't have a sanad for their ilm, they have not taken the ilm of Qur'an from the people of Qur'an, they have not taken the ilm of hadith from the people of hadith, and they have not taken the ilm of fiqh from the people of fiqh, They have no business talking about that, and you have no business listening to them. And by joining them, or listening to them, or becoming a part of their audience, you are participating in the sin that they are committing by speaking about deen. Allah says, فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ. Leave these people. People stop paying attention to them, they're going to go away. Most of these people are not coming from any kind of religious background. They're coming from some other background. But they found an open market here, that there's people that are excited and eager to listen about deen. We have something to say, we'll talk and people will listen. And that's exactly what happens. If you start ignoring them, they'll go back to wherever they were before. And if you've made the mistake, what if somebody was doing that, was listening in, was watching, whatever it was, وَإِمَّا يُنْسِيَنَّكَ الشَّيْطَانِ فَلَا تَقْعُدْ بَعْدَ الذِّكْرَى مَعَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Once you remember, don't repeat the mistake, make istighfar. So learning deen is not about getting bombarded with messages 24 hours a day. This is not the way to learn deen. Learning deen is a simple and straightforward process where you go to someone of knowledge and you take your deen from them. It's that simple. And we have obviously made things very, very sophisticated and complicated for ourselves, where it's hard to filter out some of those things. But if we want to preserve our deen the way the Quran is telling us, we will have to follow this Quranic advice. Otherwise, day by day, year by year, our confusions and doubts and suspicions will continue to increase. Let's connect with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this month. Forget about everything else. Forget about everyone else. Connect with the Quran. Read the Quran. Spend your time reading the book of Allah. Don't spend your time reading WhatsApp posts. Read the book of Allah. There is no replacement for it. What you can earn in this month, you can't earn in any other month. Why would you give that up for something else? Read the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. WhatsApp posts and Facebook posts will continue all year long and all life long. There's no end to that. Give this the time. Put those things away. Stop checking them. Nothing is going to happen. Stop checking them. Read the book of Allah and read those tafsirs that are authentic explanations of the book of Allah. That's all you need to do in this month. Leave everything and everyone else aside. Make the Quran your friend, and Allah will become your friend. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi.